As you look back, and this is really for the current brigade of midshipmen as well as for alums, what additional skill sets have you had to develop? You come out of the Naval Academy, you're a hard-charging, well-trained, ethical leader, you have an engineering degree, but then you hit reality and then you continue to evolve as a leader. What additional skill sets have you internalized over the years as you look back that have been critical to your success in addition to what you just talked about?
I think there's a tendency amongst midshipmen to see graduation as an end. It certainly was true with a lot of my Marine classmates. I'd worked hard for 4 years. I was going to go to the basic school. They were going to teach me what I needed to do, but that hard education piece, that was the end of that until I decided to pursue it differently. I think the skill set I've learned is how to draw continual personal professional development into your everyday execution of your job. Setting aside for you what I call me time. There's certainly enough to read between your BlackBerry, your computer screen, all the paperwork that will inundate anybody who comes into the Marine Corps in this day of the electronic leash. But I think you have to separate yourself from that, and you have to continue to grow in areas where you're weak, not necessarily grow in the areas where you're strong. So for me, as an engineering major, I truly had to get after things like military history. I mean, we certainly had good military history classes at the Naval Academy, but to take it and broaden that from not only the perspective of the naval service, but to draw that across the larger Department of Defense. And then to tie into that the things that were key and critical to that national defense, things like economic conditions around the world, and then certainly later in life, and I would offer now critical to those midshipmen, is an understanding of cultures and your ability to understand a culture, not only cultures that you're going to go operate in, but now increasingly the cultures we bring into our military services. We see Marines, I see Marines every day who are from different I was out at Bethesda visiting wounded yesterday, and of course you can't go anywhere as a general or flag officer now that you don't get a seeing eye dog to take you somewhere. My seeing eye dog yesterday was a young seaman who was literally first generation Haitian, born in Haiti but brought here at age 6, to see what he's accomplished over time. But my thought to myself was, as a leader, how do I reach out and communicate to this young guy whose background wasn't here in the United, and whose parents' background wasn't here in the United States. So understanding cultures, not only in cultures that we deal with in national security issues, but cultures we deal with as we bring in these vast cultures that are now part of America, I think is a real critical skill set that people are going to have to reach out to.
So said another way, you've made 3-star General in the Marine Corps. That's a significant achievement. You started out as an engineering major and a graduate from the Naval Academy. As you look back in time, if you were to give future Marines who are in the brigade today advice, would you suggest that they study languages and culture as part of their training?
Absolutely.
On a formal basis.
I speak German. It doesn't do much, to be honest.
Yeah.
I wish I had focused on a language at the time, that either Spanish. I've spent some time in Central America as a Marine. Yeah. Spanish would have been hugely helpful. Yeah. And to be honest, Spanish even helps in a lot of places around the world that you don't expect it to help so much, even over in Southeast Asia and different places. My oldest son's a Marine. He speaks a little bit of Arabic, he speaks a little bit of Swahili, he speaks a little bit of French, and he's a fluent Spanish speaker. In my mind, that's the generational difference between his Marine Corps and my Marine Corps, if you will. Yeah. Still the same Marine Corps, but generationally, 2 different Marine Corps with a focus that understands to be able to communicate not only in a language but in a culture is going to be critical.
Yeah, no, and that message is something that's so important for our brigade today. We have international immersion programs for them that Vice Admiral Michael Miller, our superintendent, is trying to expand. And for reasons you've just articulated, which is that the feeling is that the future warfighters will be abroad more often than not, will be global in their reach, and will be in different cultures that they would never have anticipated.
Absolutely.
So all of that is great advice. Tell me about some of the challenges. We all learn from our successes in many ways and love to be patted on the back, but the question is, have you learned from some of the challenges, and sometimes we call them learning moments or case studies and things that gave you a sense of how to calibrate yourself in your career? Just as an example, Admiral Mullins came through and gave us a great four-stall lecture as part of his last tour de force before he retired recently. He started the entire lecture with his first fit rep as a lieutenant when he ran a ship aground outside of Norfolk.
Yeah.
He then went on to say that for the rest of his career he worked to recover from that, and the rest is history. He's been a chairman and a fine leader.
Yeah.
How would you describe your challenges as a Marine as you evolved?
A personal challenge, probably the first real personal challenge I faced in my career of failure, was as a lieutenant colonel. Lieutenant colonel, had been doing great things, had been command screened and selected, worked for one commanding general. I was a separate battalion commander in a division. Glowing fitness report. Life was on top of my game. Life was good. Got a new commanding general of the division and got my literally lead, selected to go to top level school, and left there and was ranked literally almost last among the folks and I was crushed. I mean, you talk to a guy today, and I use it when I counsel young guys. I said, I could have gone two ways at that point. I could have said, that's it, this is just a stupid institution. If that's what they think of me, I'm done. What I literally did was circle back with the guy who put me there and ask him the reasons that he put me there. We had some very good discussions about how I got there and why he felt I was there. And part of it was me, part of it was some situation that was going on, and part of it just happened to be I was an engineer. He was an infantry officer. I was in the division. In his mind, all the infantry officers were better than everybody else in the division, but it taught me an important lesson, and the important lesson, particularly for me, because as an engineer, once I became a colonel, I became a logistician. Now I became a guy in command of a whole spectrum of different military occupational specialties. And I had to put aside the biases that I had for the guys that I had all grown up with, and they were part of that. But to remember back to my own experience, which was, yeah, but I felt like I was a pretty valuable part of that team in the division, but my division commander didn't necessarily think I was that valuable. And why didn't he think I was that valuable? And how do I communicate down to the guys I may not know so much about? You got to communicate to me your real value in this organization so that I can truly understand at the broadest levels where all the contributions are made. So as a leader, and really all leaders do is apply resources, right, whether it's a people resource, a money resource, or a time resource. How do I apply those resources? Yeah. And so I think that was probably my first failure, which I think led me to be a much better senior leader as I've gone in my career.
Fantastic. Well, that's a typical question for leaders like yourself, and some of the best always articulate how they learn from their failures more than anything else, so I appreciate that. Tell me about the Marine Corps today. In the closing minutes we have in this interview, you have been in 30 years, as you said. Your son has entered into the phase of a career in the Marines that's different than what you saw at that point in your life. Where are we today in the context of this global society and the global conflicts that we see, in your view, with respect to the United States Marine Corps? And for the brigade of midshipmen who are thinking about being Marines, what do you see as the future for the Marine Corps, and what skill sets would you suggest they pay close attention to as they enter into that service?
I guess first of all I would say to the brigade of midshipmen that we are in a period of history where the Navy Marine Corps team is the most viable asset our nation has to deal with the challenges that they're going to face. I would offer, if they stick around for their obligation for 20 years or for 30 or 40 years, that Navy Marine Corps team is going to be central to our country's success. The nature of the world, our forward basing is going to go down, but our forward presence as a result is going to have to go up. And the Navy Marine Corps team, whether it's strictly blue, strictly green, or that Navy blue-green team out on the amphib, is really the nation's capability to reach out and influence around the world. We've also learned, I think, and we're learning more and more every day, that it's not so much our ability to be decisive in combat, which is a given. We have to be able to do that. But it's the ability to shape other nations. And by shaping, I don't mean that in a negative sense. I don't mean leading them somewhere they want to go, but I mean creating the relationships. The one thing that has been driven home to me, particularly over this last 10 years of war, and my son's experience, is that it's the relationships that we build around the world that will make the difference in this next coming decades as we face uncertainty. And how they create those relationships will be critical. So understanding the cultures, embracing the different cultures, understanding how you can influence before the crisis takes place, and then thinking through. You know, the one thing that I've seen time and time again is that, and I think General Mattis probably said this best when he was down at Joint Forces Command, but he said that in all of his experience in the military, he'd never seen anything that hadn't happened before in history. The application, the ability to get to the decision space may be a different path, but the situations are always there in history. So I would offer to the skill set to develop, the thing to do, is to embrace these relationships that they're going to have to go out and take on. And in order to do that, to continually look at history through the lens of the present, to be able to project to the future, to create the opportunities that will create success for the Navy and for the Marine Corps team.
That's fantastic. Well, General Whistler, it's a pleasure to be with you, and I want to again thank you on behalf of the Alumni Association for your service to the country. Thank you for the commitment your family's made to that very same thing. And most importantly, I think you reflect what we all hope to see in an Academy graduate, a Renaissance man, a man of learned scholars and of the world, and most importantly, an empathetic leader. Thank you for your time and your
It's a pleasure to be here, Mike. Thanks. Thank you.